At 6:42, I sat on a bus with no money. My wife and her lover had thrown me out, canceled all my cards, and taken $300,000. An old man whispered, "Don't let them turn you into their story." 15 days later, that same man walked into the courtroom, and their faces turned pale. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what city you're watching us from. Now, let me tell you how I got to that bus. How a 72-year-old man, a respected businessman, owner of his own business, ended up sitting on a hard plastic seat at 6 in the morning without even being able to pay the fare. It all started 3 weeks earlier on a regular Tuesday. I woke up at 6:30, as always. Diana wasn't in bed anymore. That wasn't unusual. Lately, she was waking up early. She said she was going to the gym. I showered, put on my gray suit, the same one I'd worn on Tuesdays for years, and went down to the kitchen. The coffee was made but cold. Diana's mug was in the sink with a dark red lipstick stain on the rim. I grabbed my cell phone. It had a bank notification. Unusual activity detected in your main account. I frowned, opened the app. Balance $450. I blinked, reloaded the screen. $450. I had $280,000 in that account the day before. I felt the floor moving under my feet. I called the bank. An automated recording answered. Your wait time is approximately 35 minutes. I hung up. I opened the other account, the savings one. Balance $0. The business account 0. The investment account blocked. I tried to log into my online banking from the computer. Incorrect password. I tried to recover it. The email associated with this account has been modified. My hand started to shake. I called Diana. She didn't answer. I texted her, "Where's the money?" She didn't reply. I called my partner Ricardo, voicemail full. I grabbed my car keys and ran out to the bank. I drove 15 minutes with my heart pounding against my ribs. I arrived, went in. The account executive greeted me with a professional smile that vanished when she saw my face. "Mr. Armando, how can I help you? My accounts are empty. I need to know what happened." She typed on her computer, frowned, typed faster. "Sir, it says here that you authorized the transfers yesterday at 11 at night. I didn't authorize them, but here's your digital signature and your security token was used. I didn't sign anything. Someone stole my money." She looked at me with that expression I was already starting to recognize, that mix of pity and distrust. "Mr. Armando, I'll escalate this to the fraud department, but I need you to understand that if the digital signature is valid, the bank can't do anything. You'll have to file a criminal complaint." "How long does that take?" "The process can take between 30 and 90 days, and meanwhile, what do? I don't have access to my money." "I'm very sorry, sir, but until the investigation is resolved, the accounts will remain frozen." I left the bank feeling like I'd been emptied inside. It wasn't just the money, it was the feeling that everything I'd built could disappear in one night. I went back home, opened the door, and there they were. Diana sitting on the living room couch, Ricardo standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking at me like I was a stranger. "What's going on here?" I asked. Diana stood up. She was wearing a black dress I didn't recognize. High heels, hair tied back. "Armando, we have to talk." "Talk about what?" "Where's my money?" Ricardo stepped forward. "Your money isn't your money anymore, Armando." I looked at him without understanding. "What did you say?" Diana took a folded paper out of her purse, left it on the coffee table. "You signed a voluntary waiver of assets 3 months ago. You transferred everything to my name." "I never signed that." "Your signature is there, notarized with 2 witnesses." I grabbed the paper, opened it. There was my signature, perfect, identical, but I'd never seen that document. "This is fake. It's completely legal," Ricardo said with that calm voice that made my blood boil. "And what do you have to do with this?" "Ricardo is my lawyer and my partner." The world stopped. "Your partner?" "Yes, Armando. We've been together for 2 years, and we've been planning this for 3 months. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You guys robbed me." Diana smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "We didn't rob you. We recovered what belonged to me. I was by your side for 30 years. 30 years putting up with your bad moods, your obsession with work, your indifference. This money is mine by right. None of this is legal." Ricardo stepped closer. "It's all completely legal, Armando. And if you try anything, we'll sue you for harassment and defamation. We already have the evidence prepared. Get out of my house." Diana shook her head. "This isn't your house anymore. It's also in my name. And you have until tomorrow at noon to leave. You can't do this." "We already did." Ricardo opened the door. "I suggest you pack your things and leave in peace." I didn't move. I was paralyzed. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Diana walked past me without looking at me. "Tomorrow at 12 Armando. If you're still here, I'll call the police." And they left together. They closed the door. I just stood there in the middle of the living room with that paper trembling in my hands, feeling how everything that had been my life was crumbling in silence. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the living room couch with the lights off, staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Diana smile. That cold, calculated smile, empty of any trace of the woman I'd shared 30 years of my life with. At 5 in the morning, I tried to call my sister. She didn't answer. I left her a voicemail that sounded desperate even to me. At 6, I tried to use my credit card to buy coffee at the corner machine. Declined, I tried the other one. Declined, I tried the debit card, insufficient funds. I went back home. I looked for cash in all the drawers. I found 17 in coins and a crumpled $5 bill in the pocket of some old pants. $22. That was all I had left. I went up to the bedroom and started packing. I didn't have suitcases. Diana had taken the suitcases. I used a canvas bag I found in the closet. I put in clothes, documents, old photos of my parents. At 11:30, I went downstairs with the bag on my shoulder. Diana hadn't arrived yet. I thought about staying, planting myself there, and forcing them to kick me out by force. But then I remembered what Ricardo had said. We already have the evidence prepared. If they called the police, if they accused me of something, anything, I'd lose even the chance to defend myself. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and walked down the street with that bag hanging from my shoulder, feeling like a ghost in my own neighborhood. I had nowhere to go. My sister lived in another state. My friends were actually work acquaintances, people who disappear as soon as they found out I didn't have anything anymore. I walked to the bus stop. I sat on the metal bench. It was cold. The sky was gray. A bus stopped in front of me. I got on. I gave the driver the last ones I had. "Where are you going?" "Downtown." He looked at me suspiciously, but gave me the ticket. I sat in the back. The bus was almost empty. A woman with 2 kids, a man asleep against the window. And I leaned my head against the glass and closed my eyes. I don't know how much time passed, maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour. When I opened them, an old man was sitting next to me. I hadn't heard him arrive. I hadn't felt the weight of the seat move. He was looking forward with his hands resting on a dark wooden cane. He had white hair, completely white, slicked back, deep wrinkles around his eyes, an impeccable gray suit, as if he came from an important meeting. He didn't look at me. He just spoke softly, almost a murmur. "Don't let them make you their story." I turned my head toward him. "Excuse me." He kept looking forward. "Now, you're the victim, the man who had everything stolen from him, the old man kicked out of his house. That's the story they're going to tell. And if you stay in that role, that story becomes real. Who are you?" Then he looked at me. His eyes were gray, clear, piercing. Someone who's seen this many times, and someone who knows you still have options. I don't have options. They took everything from me. They took your money. They didn't take your ability to think. He took a card out of his pocket and handed it to me. It was a simple white card with a name printed in black letters. Fernando Suarez, lawyer specializing in asset fraud. Do you know him? Call him. Tell him what happened and stop crying over what you lost. Start documenting how they took it from you. The bus stopped. The old man stood up with that slow and steady movement of someone who's not in a hurry. He walked toward the exit. "Wait," I said, "what's your name?" He didn't answer. He got off the bus and disappeared among the people on the street. I stayed there with that card in my hand, feeling for the first time in 2 days that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over. I got off at the next stop, looked for a public phone, dialed the number on the card. A serious voice answered. "Professional, Suarez Law Firm." "Good morning." "Good morning. I need to speak with attorney Fernando Suarez." "Who's calling?" "Armando. Armando Salazar." I was given his card. "By an acquaintance." There was a pause. "One moment, please." I waited. I heard hold music, then a hoarse but firm male voice. Mr. Salazar. Yes. Fernando Suarez. Tell me, what happened? And then there, standing in a dirty phone booth in the middle of the street, with my canvas bag at my feet and the traffic noise all around, I told him everything. I told him about the empty accounts, about the fake document, about Diana and Ricardo, about getting kicked out of my house. He didn't interrupt me. He just listened. And when I finished, there was a brief silence before he spoke. Mr. Salazar, what they did to you has a name. It's called aggravated fraud with breach of trust, and it's a criminal offense. But they have documents, they have my signature. A forged signature is still forgery, and we're going to prove that. Where are you right now? On the street. I don't have a place to stay. Come to my office. 432, Insurgentes Avenue, 7th floor. I have a couch where you can sleep tonight, and tomorrow we'll start working. I don't have money to pay you. Don't pay me now. You'll pay me when we recover what's yours, and believe me, we're going to recover it. I hung up the phone, looked at the address on the card. For the first time in 48 hours, I felt something resembling hope. I grabbed my bag and walked toward Fernando Suarez's office. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I could really trust him, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be the victim of this story. I was going to be the one who rewrote it. Fernando Suarez's office wasn't what I expected. There were no marble floors or elegant receptionists. It was a small space in an old building with walls painted white and metal filing cabinets lined up against the wall. But there was something about that place that made me feel safe. Maybe it was the order, maybe it was the silence. Fernando greeted me at the door. He was a man in his 50s, tall, thin, with thick-framed glasses and a perfectly trimmed gray beard. He was wearing a white button-down shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dark pants. He looked like someone who worked late every night. "Come in, Mr. Salazar." I went in. He pointed to a chair across from his desk. I sat down. I left the canvas bag on the floor. "Do you want coffee?" "Yes, please." He poured me a cup from an old coffee maker that was on a small table in the corner. The coffee was strong and bitter. "Perfect." Fernando sat across from me and took out a notebook. "We're going to do this in an orderly way. I need you to tell me everything again, but now with details, dates, names, transactions, everything you remember." And I did. I told him about Diana, about the 30 years of marriage, about Ricardo, my partner, the man I trusted to handle the legal side of my business. I told him about the day I discovered the empty accounts, about the forged document, about getting kicked out. Fernando took notes, didn't look up, just wrote fast with that tight handwriting of someone used to recording every word. When I finished, he put his pen down on the notebook and looked at me. "Do you have copies of anything? Bank statements, contracts, emails?" "No." Diana changed all the passwords. "I can't access anything." "Your personal email too?" "Social media." "I don't use social media." Fernando nodded. "That's fine. We're going to request the bank records directly from a bank. We're also going to ask for certified copies of all the notarized documents. If the signature is fake, we'll prove it with a graphological expert report." "How long does that take?" "It depends. If we're lucky, 2 weeks. Otherwise, a month." "I don't have a month. I don't have a place to live." Fernando leaned back in his chair. "That's why you're here. Tonight, you'll stay on the couch in the waiting room. Tomorrow, we're going to the bank together to formally request the records, and then we're going to the notary's office where that document was supposedly signed. And if they don't cooperate, then we'll file a criminal complaint for forgery of documents and fraud. And believe me, Mr. Salazar, when the prosecutor's office gets involved, everyone starts cooperating." I stayed silent. I looked at my empty coffee cup. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Fernando smiled for the first time. It was a tired smile because I've seen this too many times. People who build their whole lives, and then someone close, someone they trusted, takes it all away in one night, and most of them give up. They stay in the victim role, but you came all the way here. That tells me you still have strength. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel strong. You just have to keep moving. That night, I slept on the couch in the waiting room. Fernando gave me a blanket and a pillow, turned off the lights, and went home. I laid there staring at the ceiling in the dark, thinking about everything I'd lost, but also thinking about the card the old man on the bus had given me. About that phrase, "Don't let them make you their story." Who was that man? How did he know what had happened to me? Why did he help me? I didn't have answers, but I had something better. I had a plan. The next morning, Fernando arrived at 7 with 2 coffees and a couple sandwiches. Eat breakfast. We have a lot to do today. We ate in silence, then we headed out. We went to the bank first. Fernando asked to speak with the manager. He showed him a legal letter requesting all the transaction records for my accounts over the last 6 months. The manager, a young man in a blue suit and a perfectly tied tie, looked at us uncomfortably. This is going to take a few days. You have 48 hours. After that, we'll file a complaint for complicity in bank fraud. The manager turned pale. Understood. I'll send you the documents via certified mail. We left the bank. Fernando seemed satisfied. Now, let's go to the notary. The notary's office was downtown. It was an old building with wooden floors that creaked when you walked. The secretary made us wait 20 minutes before letting us in. The notary was an older, bald man with thick glasses. Fernando explained the situation to him. The notary checked his files. Yes, here it is. Voluntary waiver of assets signed 3 months ago. Everything's in order. Can I see the original document? The notary took out a folder and showed us the paper. There was my signature. Perfect. Fernando took a magnifying glass out of his briefcase and examined the signature closely. This signature was scan printed. It's not original. That's impossible. I verified the signature personally. Did you see Mr. Salazar sign this document? The notary hesitated. No, he'd already signed when he arrived. Who brought the document? His wife and his lawyer. Fernando looked at me, then looked at the notary. So you certified a document without verifying the signer's identity. They brought an ID that could have been forged. And now, Mr. Notary, you're an accomplice to fraud. The notary stood up. I'm not an accomplice to anything. I did my job. Your job is to verify, not blindly certify whatever they put in front of you. We left the notary's office with a copy of the document. Fernando put it in his briefcase. This is gold. If we prove the signature is fake, the notary will have to testify, and when he testifies, Diana and Ricardo will start to fall. And how do we prove it's fake? With a graphological expert report. I know the best expert in the city. Let's go. We went to a modern building in the financial district. The expert's name was Carmen. She was a woman in her 60s with short hair and glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Fernando explained the situation to her. Carmen examined the document with a specialized microscope. This signature was printed. You can see the pixels right here on the edge of the letter. There's no pen pressure. There's no variation in the stroke's thickness. It's a digital copy. Can you certify that in an official report? Of course, I'll have it ready in 3 days. We left there with the first piece of real evidence. Fernando was serious, but I could see a spark in his eyes. Mr. Salazar, this is no longer a lost battle. This is a case we can win. For the first time in a week. I believed it too. We spent the next 3 days locked in Fernando's office, organizing every piece of evidence as if we were putting together a giant puzzle. He had a whiteboard on the wall where he wrote down names, dates, bank transactions. I just watched trying to understand how my life had turned into that diagram of lines and arrows. On the 3rd day, Carmen's report arrived. Fernando opened it and read out loud. The analyzed signature presents characteristics inconsistent with an authentic handwritten signature. Digital printing patterns are detected, absence of tactile pressure and uniformity in the stroke indicating mechanical reproduction. Conclusion: the signature is a forgery by digital means. Fernando closed the envelope and looked at me. This is enough to file a criminal complaint, but we need more. We need to prove that Diana and Ricardo planned this. We need the motive, the intent, and, if possible, a confession. How are we going to get a confession? You're going to talk to them. What? You're going to call Diana. You're going to tell her you want to reach an agreement, that you're tired of fighting, that you just want to recover something, even if it's a part. And why would I do that? Because arrogant people always make the same mistake. They think they've already won, and when they think that, they lower their guard, talk too much, get overconfident. And what do I do while I talk to them? Fernando took a small device out of his drawer. It was a digital recorder the size of a lighter. Record everything, every word. If they admit anything, even indirectly, we have what we need. I took the recorder. It was light, hardly weighed anything, but it felt like I was holding a bomb. What if they notice? They aren't going to notice. This recorder is professional. It doesn't make noise. It has no lights. You just have to turn it on before going in and keep it in your pocket. Where am I going to meet them? In a public place, a coffee shop, a restaurant, where there are witnesses, where they feel safe. That afternoon, I called Diana from the phone in Fernando's office. She answered on the third ring. What do you want, Armando? I want to talk in person, just the two of us. I have nothing to talk to you about. Please, Diana, just give me 10 minutes. I don't want to fight. I just want to understand. There was a long silence, then a sigh. Fine. Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon at Cafe Milano. But if you show up with lawyers or any nonsense, I'm leaving. Just me, I promise. I hung up. Fernando nodded. Perfect. I'll be at a nearby table, but I'm not going to intervene. I'm just going to observe. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over in my mind what I was going to say, how I was going to act. I needed to look defeated. I needed to look desperate, but not too much. Diana knew me. She'd know if I was acting. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I arrived at Cafe Milano. It was an elegant place, with marble tables and hanging lamps. Fernando was already there, sitting in a corner reading the newspaper. I turned on the recorder in my pocket. I felt the small device vibrate once, confirming it was recording. Diana arrived at 3 o'clock sharp. She was wearing a white dress, big sunglasses, her hair down. She looked good, rested, as if the last few days hadn't robbed her of any sleep. She sat across from me without saying hello. 10 minutes. Armando, thanks for coming. She didn't answer, just took out her phone and put it on the table as if she were keeping time. Diana, I just want to understand why you did it like this. Like this behind my back with lies. If you wanted a divorce, we could have worked things out in a civilized way. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were cold. Civilized, Armando. I spent 30 years being civilized, 30 years waiting for you to see me, to ask me how I was, to stop working for a single day to be with me. And it never happened. I worked for us to give you a good life. I didn't want a good life. I wanted a life with you, but you were never really there. That doesn't justify you robbing me. She smiled. It was a bitter smile. I didn't rob you. I took what belonged to me. And if you'd been smarter, you would have realized it sooner. Realized what? That Ricardo and I have been planning this for 2 years. 2 years, Armando. 2 years waiting for the perfect moment, and you never suspected anything because you were too busy with your business, with your meetings, in your world. I felt my heart beating faster. She was talking. She was admitting everything. And the signature. How did you get my signature? Ricardo has contacts, people who know how to do those things. We scanned your signature from an old contract, digitally cleaned it up, and printed it on the document. Easy. And the notary only saw what he wanted to see. We paid him well, so he wouldn't ask too many questions. Diana, that's illegal, it's fraud. She leaned forward. And what are you going to do? Sue me. You don't have money for a lawyer. You don't have proof. You don't have anything. Everything's in my name now. And if you try anything, Ricardo's going to bury you in lawsuits until you give up. And if I don't give up, then we'll destroy you. We'll say you were the one who committed fraud, that you manipulated the accounts, that you hid money. We already have witnesses prepared, people who will testify whatever we say. Why are you telling me all this? She stood up, put her sunglasses back on. Because I want you to understand that you've already lost, that there's nothing you can do, and because I want to see you suffer a little more before you disappear from my life forever. She left. She walked toward the exit without looking back. I just sat there with trembling hands, feeling a mix of rage and satisfaction. Rage for everything she'd said. Satisfaction because she'd said it while a recorder documented every word. Fernando came over to my table, sat down. You got it. I took the recorder out of my pocket, pressed the play button. Diana's voice sounded clear, crisp, perfect. Ricardo and I have been planning this for 2 years. Fernando smiled. Mr. Salazar, we just won this case. That night we went back to the office. Fernando plugged the recorder into his computer and started transcribing everything, every sentence, every admission, every confession. This is enough for a criminal complaint for aggravated fraud, forgery of documents, and conspiracy. Diana just dug her own grave. And now what do we do? Now we file the complaint with the prosecutor's office. We attach Carmen's report, the bank records, and this recording, and then we wait. How long? A week, maybe 2. The prosecutor's office will review everything, and if they consider there's sufficient evidence, they'll issue arrest warrants. They're going to arrest them. If everything goes well, yes. And then, Mr. Salazar, we're going to recover everything they took from you. I leaned back on the couch in the waiting room. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something resembling relief, but I also felt scared because I knew Diana and Ricardo weren't going to sit still. I knew that when they found out what we were doing, they'd fight back, and I was right. 2 days later, I received a legal summons. Diana was suing me for harassment, threats, and disturbing the peace. She attached screenshots of messages I'd supposedly sent her. Messages I never wrote. Fernando read the lawsuit and shook his head. They're panicking. This is a desperate tactic. But don't worry. We're going to prove those messages are fake too. How? Because you don't have a phone, you don't have an active line. There's no way you could have sent those messages. He was right. I didn't have a phone since Diana canceled my line. We're going to use this to our advantage, Fernando said. We're going to add falsification of evidence to the list of charges. But I knew something Fernando didn't. I knew this was just beginning. The legal summons arrived on a Friday morning. Fernando read it twice before speaking. This is more serious than I thought. Diana isn't just suing you for harassment. She's also requesting a restraining order. She says you've threatened her. You've followed her. She fears for her safety. That's a lie. I haven't gone anywhere. I've been right here with you the whole time. I know, but they're going to present evidence, messages, maybe photos. And if a judge issues that restraining order, you won't be able to get near her, and that'll make our case harder. What'll we do? Fernando closed the folder and looked me right in the eye. We're going to get ahead of them. We're going to file the criminal complaint today. Right now, before they have time to build more lies. He grabbed his briefcase, packed all the documents, Carmen's report, the bank records, the recordings transcript, everything. Let's go to the prosecutor's office. The Specialized Prosecutor's Office for Asset Crimes was in a 4-story gray building downtown. We walked in. There was a long line of people waiting their turn. We got in line, waited 2 hours. Finally, they called us. A public prosecutor agent received us in a small office with glass walls. She was a woman in her 40s, hair tied up, serious expression. How can I help you? Fernando opened his briefcase and placed all the documents on the desk. We're here to file a complaint for aggravated fraud, forgery of documents, and conspiracy to commit an asset crime. The agent reviewed the documents, read Carmen's report, read the recording's transcript, looked up. Was this recording obtained with consent? Mr. Salazar recorded a conversation he was part of. In this state, that's legal. And this signature, where's the original document? In the hands of the notary public. Here's the address. The agent took notes, then looked at the bank records, $300,000 transferred in a single night, and all accounts emptied. This is clearly a fraud case. Exactly. And we have the responsible party confessing on a recording. The agent closed the folder. I'm going to accept this complaint. I'll open an investigation file, and I'll request certified copies of all notarized documents. I'll also issue an official request to the bank for tracking the transfers. Do you have any idea where that money is right now? Fernando shook his head. No, but we suspect it was transferred to foreign accounts. We'll investigate it. I'll ask you to come back in a week. Then we'll have more information. We left the prosecutor's office. I felt a mix of hope and exhaustion. We'd taken the first official step, but there was still a long way to go. Fernando looked thoughtful. Now comes the hard part. Diana and Ricardo will realize we filed the complaint, and they'll try to destroy evidence. We need to move fast. Move where? We need to find more witnesses. People who know what they did. People who can testify. How are we going to find witnesses? Starting with the people who worked with them. Do you have employees in your business? I used to. I don't know if they're still there. Let's find out. We went to the address of my old office. It was a 2-story building in a commercial area. We went up. The door had a new sign. Ricardo Mendoza Enterprises. Legal Consulting. Ricardo had changed the name. He'd erased my last name as if I'd never existed. We went in. The receptionist looked at us in surprise. Mr. Armando. I recognized her. It was Lilia. She'd worked with me for 5 years. Lilia, I need to talk to you. She looked toward the door of Ricardo's office, nervous. I can't. Mr. Ricardo forbade me from talking to you. Just 5 minutes, please. She hesitated. Then she nodded. Go outside. I'll see you at the cafe across the street in 10 minutes. We stepped out, waited at the cafe. Lilia arrived 15 minutes later, sat with us. She looked scared. What do you need, Mr. Armando? I need to know what happened after I left. What did they tell you? What have you seen? Lilia lowered her voice. Mr. Ricardo came in one day with Mrs. Diana. He gathered us all. He told us you'd resigned, that you'd sold your share of the company, that he was now the sole owner. Some didn't believe him, but he showed us documents, signatures, everything looked legal. And then he started changing things. He fired 3 people, changed the company's bank accounts, started bringing in new clients. But I've also seen strange things. What kind of things? Documents, contracts with signatures that don't look real. I've seen Mr. Ricardo scan old signatures and use them on new documents, and I've overheard conversations. He talks on the phone with people, says things like, nobody's going to notice, or it's all sorted out with the notary. Fernando leaned forward. Would you be willing to testify to that before the prosecutor's office? Lilia turned pale. If I testify, they'll fire me, and I need this job. If you testify, Mr. Ricardo will end up in prison, and you'll be able to work for a company that isn't built on fraud. She stayed silent. She looked at her coffee cup. Let me think about it. We don't have much time, Lilia. They're trying to destroy evidence. We need witnesses right now. She looked up. There were tears in her eyes. Fine, I'll testify, but I need you to protect me. Mr. Ricardo is dangerous. I've seen him threaten people. We're going to protect you, I promise. Lilia gave us her phone number and left. Fernando and I stayed at the cafe. This is good, he said. Very good. We have an inside witness, someone who saw how they operated. That strengthens the case enormously, and if Ricardo threatens her, that's why we'll ask for protection for her. That's why we're going to speed all this up. The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Fernando filed a request for precautionary measures. He requested the preventive freezing of all accounts in Diana and Ricardo's names. He requested the immobilization of properties. He requested search warrants to look for documents in the office and the house. The prosecutor's office approved everything. On Wednesday morning at 7 o'clock sharp, a group of ministerial police agents arrived at Ricardo's office. They arrived with court orders. They went in, confiscated computers, files, documents. Ricardo called his lawyer. He tried to stop them, but couldn't do anything. The orders were clear. At the same time, another group of agents arrived at my old house. Diana was there. She tried to close the door, but the agents had a search warrant. They went in, searched everything, found documents, found a laptop with compromising files. Fernando called me at 10 in the morning. Armando, they found evidence. A lot of evidence. Emails between Diana and Ricardo planning everything. Files with your scanned signatures. Fake contracts. It's all there. And now what happens? Now the prosecutor's office has enough to issue arrest warrants. Are they going to arrest them? When? Soon. Very soon. That afternoon, while I was in Fernando's office reviewing documents, my old phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered Armando. It was Diana. Her voice sounded different, scared. What do you want? I need to talk to you in person. It's urgent. I have nothing to talk to you about. Please, I'm begging you. Just give me a chance. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. Diana, I already filed a complaint. They already have the evidence. You've already lost. There was a long silence. Then her voice broke. Armando, please don't do this. I made a mistake, but we can solve it. I can give you the money back, everything. Just withdraw the complaint. No, Armando, if you don't withdraw the complaint, I'm going to prison. Is that what you want? It's exactly what I want. I hung up. Fernando looked at me. Well done. 2 days later, on a Friday at 6 in the evening, the prosecutor's office issued the arrest warrants. Diana was arrested at home. Ricardo was arrested at his office. They took them in to give statements. They locked them in separate cells, and I, for the first time in a month, felt I could breathe. The news of the arrests reached my phone at 7 in the evening. Fernando called me from his car, his voice loaded with contained satisfaction. They're both detained now. Diana's at the Women's Rehabilitation Center and Ricardo's at the North Penitentiary. They're going to spend the night there. Tomorrow they have their arraignment hearing. What does that mean? It means a judge is going to decide if there's enough evidence to prosecute them. If the judge considers there is, they're formally charged and the criminal process continues. If he says no, they go free. Is there a possibility they go free? With all the evidence we have, it's almost impossible, but the judicial system always has surprises. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake on the office couch, staring at the ceiling, imagining how Diana and Ricardo must be right now in cold cells, with wrinkled clothes, unable to call anyone until the next morning. A part of me felt satisfaction, but another part, a small part that still remembered the early years with Diana, felt something like sadness. 30 years together reduced to this, but then I'd remember her smile at the cafe, that arrogant smile when she told me I'd already lost and the sadness disappeared. At 8 in the morning, Fernando arrived with coffee and pastries. The hearing is at 10. We're going to arrive early. I want you to see this. I want you to see how justice is served. We went to the courthouse. It was a gray concrete building, austere, with long hallways that smelled of dampness and old paper. There were people waiting on metal benches, lawyers in wrinkled suits, crying families. We entered the courtroom. It was small, with white walls and a long table at the front where the judge would sit. There were 2 more tables, one for the prosecution and one for the defense. We sat on the back benches reserved for the public. At 10 o'clock sharp, they brought Diana in. She was wearing a beige inmate uniform. Her hair was down, messy, without makeup. She looked 10 years older. When she walked in, her eyes searched the room. She saw me, and for a second her expression broke, but then she looked away. 5 minutes later, they brought Ricardo, and also wearing a beige uniform. He had deep dark circles, overgrown beard. He sat next to Diana. They didn't look at each other. They didn't speak. The judge came in. He was an older man in his 60s with completely white hair and a serious expression. He was wearing the black robe. He sat behind a bench, and then I recognized him. It was him, the old man from the bus. I felt my blood run cold. Fernando looked at me confused. "What's wrong?" "That judge," I whispered. "He's the man from the bus, the one who gave you your card." Fernando frowned. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure." Fernando looked toward the bench. The judge was reviewing some documents. Then he looked up and spoke with a firm and clear voice. "Arraignment hearing. Criminal case number 547. Defendants Diana Marquez Ruiz and Ricardo Mendoza Castro. Charges: aggravated fraud, forgery of documents, and conspiracy to commit an asset crime." Diana and Ricardo looked up, and when they saw the judge, their faces turned pale, completely pale. They recognized him too. The judge looked at them expressionless. Then he looked at the prosecutor. "Proceed, public prosecutor agent." The prosecutor stood up. She was the same woman who had helped us days earlier. She opened her folder and started reading. "Your Honor, I am here to request the binding over for trial of defendants Diana Marquez Ruiz and Ricardo Mendoza Castro for the crimes of aggravated fraud, forgery of public documents, and conspiracy to commit an asset crime. The facts are as follows." And she proceeded to narrate everything: the transfer of $300,000, the forgery of my signature, the fraudulent notarized document, the recorded confession, Lilia's testimony, the documents found in the searches. Every word was like a hammer striking. Diana lowered her head. Ricardo clenched his fists. When the prosecutor finished, the judge looked at the defense attorney. "Does the defense have anything to argue?" The lawyer stood up. He was a young man, nervous. "Your Honor, my clients deny all charges. We consider the evidence presented to have been obtained illegally. The recording was made without consent. The searches were excessive, and the witness's testimony is unreliable because she has a workplace conflict of interest." The judge looked at him without blinking. "Are you finished?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Very well, I will rule." There was absolute silence in the courtroom. The judge took his pen and started writing on a document. Having analyzed the investigation file, the evidentiary elements presented by the prosecution and the defense's arguments, this court determines the following. He paused, looked at Diana and Ricardo. First, the recording was obtained legally. The complainant recorded a conversation he was part of in a public place without violating any law. Therefore, it's admissible as evidence. The defense attorney sank into his chair. Second, the searches were carried out with duly substantiated court orders. The evidence obtained is valid. Diana closed her eyes. Third, the testimony of witness Lilia Hernandez is consistent with the rest of the evidence. There's no conflict of interest that invalidates her statement. Ricardo shook his head in disbelief. Therefore, this court resolves. Defendants Diana Marquez Ruiz and Ricardo Mendoza Castro are bound over for trial for the crimes of aggravated fraud, forgery of public documents, and conspiracy to commit an asset crime. He slammed his gavel. The sound echoed throughout the courtroom. Furthermore, pretrial detention is ordered for both defendants due to the severity of the crimes, the flight risk, and the risk of destruction of evidence. They'll remain in the custody of the penitentiary system until the oral trial is resolved. Diana started crying. They weren't silent tears, they were deep, desperate sobs. Ricardo stood up. This is unfair. You can't lock us up without real evidence. The judge looked at him coldly. Sit down, Mr. Mendoza, or I'll have you removed from the courtroom for contempt. Ricardo sat down, trembling with rage. The judge continued. The next hearing will be in 30 days. The prosecution will have that period to complete the complementary investigation. Court is adjourned. He slammed the gavel again. The police took Diana and Ricardo away. She walked with her head down, crying. He walked stiffly, with his jaw clenched. When they passed by me, Diana looked at me. Her eyes were red, swollen. Armando, please, she whispered. Don't do this, please. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And she looked down and kept walking. When I left the courtroom, Fernando put a hand on my shoulder. We did it. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about the judge, about that old man from the bus. We left the courthouse. I waited for the judge to come out of the courtroom. When I saw him walking down the hall, I approached him. Excuse me, Your Honor. He stopped, looked at me, and for the first time smiled slightly. Mr. Salazar, you helped me that day on the bus. You gave me Attorney Suarez's card. Why? The judge looked around, making sure no one was listening to us. Then he spoke in a low voice, because I've seen too many cases like yours, honest people destroyed by unscrupulous people, and most give up. But you had something in your eyes. Something that told me you still had the strength to fight. How did you know you were going to be the judge for this case? I didn't. Cases are assigned randomly. It was a coincidence. Coincidence. He smiled. Or maybe justice. Sometimes the universe has its own way of balancing things out. He patted me on the shoulder. Take care, Mr. Salazar, and don't let this embitter you. Get your life back, rebuild. That's the best thing you can do. And he walked slowly down the hall with his black robe billowing behind him. Fernando came over to me. What did he say to you? Nothing. Just to keep moving forward. We left the courthouse. The sun was shining outside. It was warm. For the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling peace. The next 30 days were a strange mix of relief and anxiety. Diana and Ricardo were still in pretrial detention, waiting for the oral trial. But Fernando warned me we still couldn't let our guard down. The criminal process is only one part. Now we need to recover your money, and for that we need to prove exactly where it is. The prosecutor's office had requested the complete tracking of the bank transfers. The results arrived 2 weeks after the arrest. Fernando read them carefully and then looked at me with a serious expression. Your $300, 000, was transferred to 3 different accounts, one in Panama, one in the Cayman Islands, and one in Switzerland. Ricardo knew exactly what he was doing. Can we recover it? Yes, but it's going to be complicated. We need international cooperation, financial extradition treaties. It can take months, even years. I don't have years. I know. That's why we're going to follow another strategy. Fernando took a new folder out of his filing cabinet. We're going to attach everything in Diana's and Ricardo's names here in the country. Properties, local bank accounts, vehicles, everything. And we're going to force an immediate restitution as part of the criminal sentence. Is that possible? Not only is it possible, it's mandatory. If the judge declares them guilty, he has to order reparation for damages, and that means giving you your money back with interest. During those days, I also received calls, a lot of calls. The first was from my sister, who I hadn't seen for 5 years. She'd read about the case in the local news. "Armando, why didn't you tell me anything? I could have helped you. I didn't want to worry you. I'm your sister. That's what I'm here for." It was strange to hear her voice after so much time. We talked for an hour. She offered me her house if I needed a place to stay. I told her maybe later on. The second call was from a journalist from the city's largest newspaper. "Mr. Salazar, we're doing a report on asset fraud between couples. Would you be willing to give an interview?" Fernando advised me not to talk to the press yet. The trial isn't over yet. Anything you say can be used by the defense to argue you're influencing public opinion. Wait until there's a sentence. I took his advice. The third call was the most unexpected. It was Carmen, the graphological expert who'd analyzed my signature. "Mr. Salazar, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." We met at a cafe near her office. Carmen carried a thick folder under her arm. She looked nervous. "What happened?" "I was contacted. People from Ricardo's side. They offer me money to change my report. If I stated I'd made a mistake in the analysis." I felt rage rising in my chest again. "And what did you tell them?" "That I wouldn't. That I'd never fake an expert report, but I want you to know they're going to try to discredit me at the trial. They've already hired another expert to do a counter-analysis." "Can they do that?" "They can, but my report is solid. I have the microscopic photographs. I have the measurements. I have everything. They're not going to be able to refute it." Fernando, who was sitting with us, took notes. "This is important. I'm going to notify the prosecutor's office. Trying to bribe an expert is another crime. We're going to add it to the list of charges." Carmen left half an hour later. But before she left, she told me something I won't forget. "Mr. Salazar, I've worked on hundreds of cases, and what they did to you is among the worst I've seen. But I've also seen how you fought. That says a lot about who you are. Don't let this destroy you." Her words kept spinning in my head the rest of the day. A week before the oral trial, Fernando called me to his office urgently. "I have news, and it's complicated." "What happened?" "Diana's lawyer filed a request. She wants to testify. She wants to reach a plea deal with the prosecutor's office." "What kind of deal?" "It's called an opportunity criterion. Basically, she pleads guilty and completely rats out Ricardo in exchange for a sentence reduction. Instead of 10 years, she could get out in 3 or 4. And what happens to my money? If she cooperates, she has to reveal where all the money is. She has to give the passwords for the offshore accounts, and she has to sign for total restitution. And Ricardo gets the full sentence, 10, maybe 15 years. He was the mastermind behind it all. He forged the documents. He contacted the corrupt notary. He moved the money. Diana was just the accomplice. I stayed silent processing. What do you think?" Fernando took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. "I think it's our best option to get your money back fast. If we go to a full trial, we can win, but the process can take another year. And meanwhile, that money stays hidden in accounts that can be emptied or transferred to other places. If Diana cooperates now, we can track everything and recover it in months. And she gets off almost free, not free. She's going to prison. She's going to lose everything. She's going to have a criminal record. Her life will never be the same again. But yes, she's going to get out before Ricardo." I thought about Diana, about that woman who cried at the hearing, about the woman I spent 30 years with, and then I thought about her arrogant smile at the cafe, about her cold voice when she told me I'd already lost. I accept her cooperating. I want my money back. Fernando nodded. I'll notify the prosecutor's office. 2 days later, Diana signed the agreement. She agreed to plead guilty. She agreed to give all the information about the offshore accounts. She agreed to testify against Ricardo. In exchange, her sentence was reduced to 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole at 2 years for good behavior. Ricardo, when he found out, exploded. He tried to attack his own lawyer at one of the preliminary hearings. They had to take him out of the courtroom handcuffed. The oral trial began on a Monday morning. The courtroom was full. Journalists, onlookers. relatives of both parties. The same judge from the bus presided. He walked in with his black robe and sat behind the bench with the same serious expression as always. The oral trial in criminal case begins. 547 defendants: Diana Marquez Ruiz and Ricardo Mendoza Castro. The prosecutor presented all the evidence: Carmen's report, the bank records, the recording of the confession, the documents found in the searches, Lilia's testimony. Every piece fit perfectly. Then it was Diana's turn. She took the stand as a cooperating witness. She was wearing the beige inmate uniform. Her hair was tied back, no makeup. She looked fragile. But when she started talking, her voice was firm. It was all Ricardo's idea. He convinced me. He told me Armando was never going to notice, that it was money I deserved after so many years of marriage. I just wanted to get out of that relationship, and he offered me a way out. Ricardo looked at her with pure hate from his table. He forged Armando's signature. He contacted the notary. He moved the money to the foreign accounts. I just signed where he told me to. I just followed his instructions. And the day they kicked Mr. Salazar out of his house was Ricardo's idea. He said we had to act fast, that if Armando had time to react, he'd discover us. Do you regret it? Diana lowered her head. For a moment, it looked like she was going to cry. Yes, I regret it. Armando didn't deserve this. He worked his whole life, and I destroyed everything out of greed, out of fear, out of stupidity. When Diana finished testifying, the judge called Ricardo to the stand. Do you wish to testify, Mr. Mendoza? Ricardo stood up, looked at Diana with contempt, then looked at the judge. Yes, I want to testify. He took the stand. His lawyer tried to stop him, but Ricardo ignored him. Everything she said is a lie. I didn't force anyone. She came to me. She asked me for help to take the money from Armando. She was the one who planned everything. I just executed it. Do you have proof of that? I don't need proof. The truth is the truth. The judge looked at him expressionless. You may step down. Ricardo stepped down from the stand. The trial lasted 3 more days. There was more testimony, more evidence, more arguments. And finally the time for the verdict arrived. The day of the verdict, the courtroom was fuller than ever. I arrived early with Fernando. We sat in the same place as always, in the back benches. My sister had traveled from her city to be with me. She sat next to me and held my hand. No matter what happens, you already won, she whispered to me. You already got your dignity back. I nodded, but my stomach was tied in knots. There was still a fundamental piece missing: the money. Without that, all this meant nothing. At 10 o'clock sharp, they brought in Diana, then Ricardo, both handcuffed, both in wrinkled beige uniforms. Diana kept her head down. Ricardo looked forward with his jaw clenched, as if he were facing a firing squad. The judge walked in. The entire room stood up. He sat down, arranged some papers on his desk, and finally spoke. Having analyzed all the evidence presented, the testimonies given, and the arguments of both parties, this court proceeds to dictate sentencing. The silence was absolute. You couldn't even hear a breath. In the case of defendant Diana Marquez Ruiz, who accepted an opportunity criterion and fully cooperated with the investigation, this court declares her guilty of the crimes of aggravated fraud and complicity in the forgery of documents. Diana closed her eyes. She is sentenced to 4 years in prison with the possibility of obtaining parole after serving 2 years for good behavior. Furthermore, she is ordered to make full restitution of the money stolen from Mr. Armando Salazar, including accrued interest calculated at a total amount of $320,000. Fernando squeezed my shoulder. $20,000 more than I'd lost. Legal interest. The judge continued. In the case of defendant Ricardo Mendoza Castro, who didn't cooperate with the investigation and furthermore attempted to obstruct justice by trying to bribe an expert, this court declares him guilty of the crimes of aggravated fraud, forgery of public documents, use of forged documents, conspiracy to commit an asset crime, and obstruction of justice. Ricardo clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. He is sentenced to 15 years in prison without the possibility of a sentence reduction. Furthermore, he is ordered to make joint restitution of the stolen money in the event that Mrs. Marquez cannot fulfill the entirety. A total embargo on all his movable and immovable property is also decreed to guarantee payment of the restitution. Ricardo stood up violently. This is an injustice. You don't have real evidence. Everything was manipulated. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Mendoza, sit down immediately or you will be removed from the courtroom. I'm not going to sit down. You're colluding with them. From the beginning, this was a setup. 2 police officers approached Ricardo. He tried to break free, but they held him tightly. Let go of me. This isn't over. I'm going to appeal. I'm going to. They dragged him away. His shouts faded as they took him out the back door. Diana cried in silence. She didn't look up at any point. The judge waited for order to be restored. Then he continued. Finally, this court orders that within a period of no more than 30 days, the recovery of the stolen funds be completed through international cooperation with the banking authorities of Panama, the Cayman Islands, and Switzerland. Mrs. Marquez must provide all necessary passwords and access codes. He banged the gavel one last time. Court is adjourned. The sentence is final and is registered in the archives of this court. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The journalists ran toward the exit to broadcast the news. My sister hugged me. Fernando was smiling. We did it. Armando, we did it. I couldn't speak. I felt a lump in my throat. It wasn't exactly joy. It was more like a deep exhaustion, as if I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. We left the courthouse. There were cameras outside. A journalist approached with a microphone. Mr. Salazar, how do you feel after the verdict? I looked at the camera, thought about all the people who were maybe going through the same thing I'd gone through, people who thought there was no way out. I feel relieved and grateful. Grateful to the justice system, to my lawyer, to the people who believed in me when I had nothing. I want to tell anyone who is going through something similar, don't give up. Document everything, get help. Don't let anyone steal your story. The journalist nodded. What are you going to do now? I'm going to get my life back, and I'm going to start over. That night, Fernando invited me to dinner at a small restaurant near his office. He ordered wine. Let's toast to justice. He said, to justice. I repeated, you know, Armando, in my 20-year career, I've seen a lot of cases, but few as satisfying as this one. Diana and Ricardo thought they were smarter than everyone, and in the end, their own arrogance destroyed them. I still have to get the money back. That's just a matter of time. Diana already handed over all the information. The banks are cooperating. In 2 weeks, 3 tops, you'll have your money back. And then what? Then you rebuild, you reopen your business, you live again. I took a sip of wine. It tasted bitter. I don't know if I want to go back to the same thing. That business cost me 30 years of my life, and in the end, it almost cost me everything. Then do something different. You're 72 years old, but you still have time to start over. That night, when I went back to the small apartment I'd managed to rent with the money my sister had loaned me, I sat by the window and looked at the city, the lights, the traffic, the life that kept moving. I took the judge's card out of my pocket, the one the old man on the bus had given me. It wasn't Fernando's card. It was another one I hadn't seen before. It simply said, don't let them make you their story. Write your own. It didn't have a name. It didn't have a number. Just that phrase. I put it on the table, and for the first time in months, I smiled. 2 weeks later, just as Fernando had promised, the money arrived. $320,000 transferred to a new account I'd opened with my sister's help. The bank notified me by email. I checked the balance 3 times to make sure it was real. It was real. I called Fernando. It's here. Everything down to the last penny with interest. Then, officially, Mr. Salazar, your case is closed. What happens now to Diana and Ricardo? Diana's going to serve her sentence. 2 years minimum for maximum. Ricardo's going to be locked up for 15 years. There's no possible appeal. The evidence was overwhelming, and the notary was also prosecuted. He was suspended from his position. He'll probably get 5 years. I hung up the phone, sat in the living room of my small apartment, looked around. I didn't have much, a table, 2 chairs, an old couch, but it was mine and no one had taken it from me. My sister came to visit me that afternoon, brought food. We cooked together like when we were kids. We talked about our parents, about the old days, about how life can surprise you in the worst and best ways. Are you going to forgive Diana someday? She asked me while we were washing the dishes. I don't know, maybe. But not now. Right now, I just want to move on. That's fine. You don't have to forgive anyone if you aren't ready. That night, before going to sleep, I reread the phrase on the card. Don't let them make you their story. Write your own. And I made a decision. The next day, I opened a commercial bank account. I invested $100,000 in a new project. I wasn't going to rebuild my old business. I was going to create something new, something I really cared about. I hired Lilia as my assistant. She'd lost her job after testifying against Ricardo. She needed an opportunity, and I needed someone I could trust. Are you sure about this, Mr. Armando? She asked me when I offered her the job, completely sure. You risked your job to tell the truth. That's worth more than any work experience. She accepted, and so began the next part of my life. Not as a victim, not as the man who was robbed of everything, but as Armando Salazar, a man who fell, got back up, and decided to write his own story. 6 months after the sentencing, my life had changed in ways I never imagined. I opened a small consulting firm specializing in helping elderly people protect their assets. After everything I'd lived through, I knew exactly what signs to look for, what documents to review, how to detect when someone was being manipulated. Lilia turned out to be much more than an assistant. She was organized, smart, and had a natural gift for dealing with people. Together, we helped 15 clients in the first 3 months. Some just needed advice. Others needed urgent legal help. I referred them to Fernando, who was always willing to collaborate. One Tuesday morning, while checking emails in my small office, I received an unexpected call. Mr. Armando Salazar, yes, that's me, calling from the Women's Rehabilitation Center. Mrs. Diana Marquez is requesting a visit from you. Would you be willing to come? I stayed silent. I hadn't seen Diana since the day of the verdict. I hadn't spoken to her. I hadn't thought about her more than necessary. What does she want to see me for? I can't give you that information, sir. I can only relay the request to you. Do I have to go? No, sir, it's completely voluntary. I hung up. I looked out my office window. The sun came in at an angle, illuminating the dust floating in the air. I called Fernando. Diana wants to see me. Are you going? I don't know. Should I? Only you could decide that. But if you go, I recommend you don't go alone and don't sign anything, don't promise anything, and don't commit to anything. Do you think she's still trying to manipulate me? I don't know, but I've seen stranger things. I thought about it for 2 days. I finally decided to go, not because I owe Diana anything, but because I needed to close that chapter completely. The Women's Rehabilitation Center was on the outskirts of the city. It was a gray building surrounded by high fences. They registered me at the entrance, searched me, took me to a visiting room with plastic tables and metal chairs. Diana walked in 5 minutes later. She was wearing the standard beige uniform. She had short hair now, very short, almost buzzed, no makeup. She lost weight. She looked smaller, more fragile. She sat across from me, didn't smile, didn't say hello, just looked at me. Thanks for coming. What do you want, Diana? I want to apologize. I leaned back in the chair, crossed my arms. I already heard you apologize at the trial. That was for the judge. This is for you. There was a long silence. She looked at her intertwined hands on the table. I destroyed everything, our marriage, your trust, your life. And I did it out of greed, out of stupidity, out of fear. Fear of what? Fear of growing old with nothing. Fear that you'd leave me. Fear of ending up alone. Ricardo convinced me you were eventually going to abandon me, that I needed to secure my future, and I believed him. And now, I know I was a fool, that I had everything and I threw it away, that the only one I really cared about was you, and I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I looked at her face. I looked for signs of manipulation, of fakeness, but the only thing I saw was exhaustion, defeat, genuine regret. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued. I don't expect us to speak again after today. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. And that if I could turn back time, I never would have done what I did. I stayed silent for a moment, then spoke. I'm sorry too, Diana. I'm sorry I wasn't present. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry I prioritized work over our relationship. I'm not justifying what you did, but I understand I also had my share of the blame. She looked up. She had tears in her eyes. Do you hate me? No, not anymore. Hate is too tiring, and I'm too old to carry that. Are you okay? Did you get your life back? I'm rebuilding. I opened a new business, something different, something I really care about. I'm glad. I'm truly glad. We sat in silence for a few minutes. There was nothing left to say. 30 years reduced to this cold conversation in a prison room. I stood up. Take care, Diana. You too, Armando. I left the rehabilitation center feeling something strange. It wasn't exactly peace, but it wasn't anger either. It was more like acceptance. Acceptance that the past was the past, that I couldn't change it, that I could only move forward. A month later, I got another call, this time from the public hospital. Mr. Armando Salazar. Yes, we have Mr. Ricardo Mendoza here. He collapsed in prison. He's in delicate condition. He asked for you. Why'd he ask for me? We don't know, sir. He just asked us to contact you. I didn't go. I had nothing to say to Ricardo. He'd never apologized. He'd never shown regret, and I didn't owe him anything. Fernando called me that afternoon. Did you hear about Ricardo? Yes, I'm not going. Good. That man doesn't deserve your time. Do you know what happened to him? Heart attack. The stress of prison, probably he's going to survive, but he's going to stay in the hospital for a while, and then he goes back to prison. He still has 14 and a half years left. I hung up, continued with my work. Life went on. 3 months later, exactly a year since that morning on the bus, I received a letter. It had no return address, just my name, an address handwritten in black ink. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from a judge, the old man from the bus. It said, "Dear Mr. Salazar, I'm writing these lines to congratulate you, not only for winning your case, but for recovering something much more valuable, your dignity and your purpose. I've followed your new venture from a distance. I'm pleased to see you're using your experience to help others. That's what it truly means to write your own story. It's not about revenge. It's about transforming pain into purpose. I wish you much success. And remember, the universe has strange ways of balancing things out. Sincerely, a friend." I read the letter 3 times. Then I kept it in my desk drawer next to that card that said, "Don't let them make you their story. Write your own." That night, I took the same bus I'd taken that day. I sat in the same seat. I looked out the window. The city looked different now, or maybe I was the one seeing it differently. A young man sat next to me. His head was down, eyes red, as if he'd been crying. "Are you okay?" I asked him. He looked at me surprised. "My wife left me. She took everything. I don't know what to do." I took a card out of my pocket, the card for my new company. "Here, call me tomorrow. Let's see how I can help you." He took the card confused. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "Because someone did the same for me when I needed it most." The bus stopped. The young man got off. I stayed seated watching him walk away into the night, and then I completely understood what the old man had told me that day. It wasn't just about my story. It was about all stories, about how one person's pain can become another's salvation, about how justice isn't always fast, but eventually arrives, about how it's never too late to start over. I got off the bus at my stop, walked to my apartment. The air was cool, the stars shined above. I took out my phone and sent my sister a message. "Thanks for being there when I needed you most." She replied immediately. That's what family is for. I went into my apartment, poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, looked around. I didn't have much, but I had peace, I had purpose, I had my dignity intact, and I had a story to tell. Not the story Diana and Ricardo wanted to write for me. Not the story of the destroyed, defeated, abandoned man, but my own story, the story of Armando Salazar, a 72-year-old man who lost everything, hit rock bottom, and decided to get up, not with anger, not with revenge, but with intelligence, patience, and the iron determination not to let others write his ending. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a year, I slept deeply without nightmares, without fear, without anger, just with the certainty that in the end, justice had arrived and that my story was now completely mine.